Good evening, everyone. It's 6:03 p.m. We're going to call this meeting to order now. It's March 26, 2025, and this is a public meeting of the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing, full committee meeting. And I'm going to pass it over to one of our full committee chairs, Odelia, to get the meeting started.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Odelia Zuckerman. Use she, her pronouns. I'm one of the co-chairs of the full committee for PCCEP. We're just going to go ahead and do PCCEP intros. So I will pass it on to Devonte if you can hop on or introduce yourself in the chat, whatever works.
Thank you, Adelia, Devontae Manyweather, the other co-chair for the full committee of PCCEP. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. And I'll pass it off to, let's see, Kip.
Hi there. Kip Silverman, he, him pronouns, co-chair of the Policy and Reform Subcommittee. My other co-chair will not be available tonight, unfortunately, but I'm hoping she's having a great time. I will pass it on to, I see Noelle.
Hi, I'm Noelle Cuthair, she, her pronouns. I am a newer member of PCCEP, and I am currently the new co-chair of the Community Engagement Subcommittee. Let's go with Viva. Or Viva.
Hi, Viva Campo, she, her pronouns, and PCCEP member. I will hand it over to, it's hard to find the names right now. Thought I saw Carrie. Is that correct?
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Carrie Driver. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a PCCEP member and a member of the Community Engagement Subcommittee. I'll pass it to Leslie.
Hi, everyone. Leslie Martinez. My pronouns are she, hers. And thank you all for being here. I'm not officially on any committee yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's everyone.
I think everyone is here, yeah.
Okay, cool. So now if we can just have folks from the city introduce themselves. Yeah, Dory, do you want to start?
Yeah, hi everyone, Dory Grabinski, PCCEP Program Manager. Glad to see everybody tonight.
I'll jump in. Hi everybody, Stephanie Howard, she, her pronouns. I work for the DCA of Public Safety. And I'm glad to be here with you tonight.
Good evening, Bob Day. Oh, sorry, Mary Claire, you want to
go? No, go ahead. Go ahead, Chief. I didn't see you.
Bob Day, Chief of Police for the Police Bureau. Thanks for having us.
Mary Claire Buckley from the Portland Police Bureau. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brian Hughes. I'm the commander of Central Precinct here at the Portland Police Bureau, and today's my first time here.
I'm also with the city. I'm Kristen Thorpe, and I'm with the Office of Community-Based Police Accountability, and this is also my first time here, so thank you.
Cool, welcome. Also, independent monitor team, if y'all want to introduce yourselves too.
Thanks, Adelia. Hey, everyone. Chet Armidas here, Associate Monitor with the Court-Appointed Independent Monitoring Team, and I'll pass it over to my colleague, Antoinette.
Greetings all, Antoinette Edwards, proud member of the Independent Monitoring Team. He, she, her pronouns. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Afrida Davis, and I am a facilitator of the space.
Hi, I'm Sarah Ames. I'm a deputy city attorney. Use she, her pronouns.
Awesome. And I don't know if there's anyone else, but if you're a community member, please introduce yourself in the chat.
I'll introduce. I'm Emily Hebron. I'm with Council President's Office. I use she, they pronouns.
And this is Samir Kanal. I'm a member of the Portland City Council.
Okay, cool. Well, we've got a lot of people here, so that's so exciting. Thanks all for introducing yourselves. I can go ahead and read our community agreements. So, listen actively and respectfully, share airtime, be present and open to new information and perspectives, assume positive intent, respect each other, respect the group, speak your own truth, communicate directly, honestly, and respectfully, ask questions to clarify, call out bias, and be okay with ambiguity. And then also, Devontae, let me know when you're home and then I can pass it on over. But just a brief overview of today's meeting. We're going to start with some updates. We have kind of a packed meeting today. So we're then going to move on to talk about PPB attendance of council, town halls, or events, and then kind of move that into a Q&A on community engagement for PPB. And then we'll also do a little briefing and Q&A on the PPB response to the community free store. And then we will talk about PCCEP structure a little bit more to wrap things up and just how everything fits together. And then as always, we'll end with open public comment. So really exciting. It's gonna be PCCEP's first time meeting with Mayor Wilson. So we're very excited for that. And we'll see how it goes. We're looking forward to it. Devontae and I will be meeting with him on Monday, April 7th. And then also on Monday, April 7th, we'll be doing a film screening of Alien Boy, The Life and Death of James Chassie, which will be at the Clinton Street Theater from 7 to 9. This will be part of the Mental Health Alliance's training to PCCEP that's required. And you do have to RSVP, but it's also free. So if you want to scan this or type in the bit.ly. One thing to note is like this is a really hard film to watch, so just like follow your capacity and where you're at. Yeah.
Mute.
And then for the contact survey update, in 2023, PCCEP recommended that PPB adopt a contact survey to capture information about experiences of individuals stopped by police. And Stephanie Howard is here, who was the former director of the community safety for Ted Wheeler's office and the current PSSA director of community safety and has been overseeing this project. And also Carrie Driver, a PCCEP member, was a part of that steering committee. I don't know if you have any updates to share.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Yeah, so we Mayor Wheeler, back when the recommendation was made, Mayor Wheeler and the chief agreed that they would love to see a contact survey implemented. And so I was directed by Mayor Wheeler to bring a work group together that included Carrie, included a community member from the Training Advisory Council, and some other teams within the city, including data teams and procurement and representatives from PPB, And we met several times to try to flesh out what we wanted to see in the request for proposals to get to identify a vendor that could meet all of the needs that we were hoping to meet, and work out, what a pilot project for this would look like. We ran into some delays completely on the side of the city. The work group is great, but the draft of the RFP got delayed in procurement. And so what we've been doing right now, I thought that it was under review by the BTS, the Bureau of Technology Services team, because anytime there's an RFP that relates to a software or a new technology or anything like that that would integrate with city technology, they have to review it and give feedback and approve it before it could be posted. But unfortunately, it had not been there. Our procurement team was backlogged much more severely than I realized, and so it got delayed by several months. However, it's been reassigned in procurement. The draft is now with the BTS procurement team, and I'm following up with them regularly to move that forward. Once we have their feedback, then I can reassemble the work group. We can review their feedback and incorporate recommendations, and again, just finalize what that request for proposals looks like. And then once that's done, I think we can get it posted and start receiving proposals from vendors who would like to provide that contract survey service. And I will just say, everyone has heard about the city's budget problems, so I want to be completely transparent. Mayor Wheeler set aside $100,000 budget for that pilot. We carried it over last year, but now that we're in another delay because of the procurement backlog, the budget office is looking under every couch cushion for every dime. The public safety service area team, we are all advocating strongly that is related to PCCEP's work. It's related to the settlement agreement, and that budget needs to be carried over if we're not able to get the contract for that contact survey completed before the end of this fiscal year. I am optimistic that will happen, but I just always want to be transparent with you. There's a chance that the city budget office may disagree. Again, I'm optimistic, but if that happens, we'll be in touch with you. And just as sort of a backup, I'm also in the process right now of writing for a grant application that could potentially fund it if there was an issue with the budget. But I think we've received nothing but unanimous support from the city teams, from PPB leadership, from procurement, from everyone. So I don't anticipate an issue, but I will, like I said, I just want to be transparent that conversation's happening, and we are doing everything we can to move forward as quickly as possible.
Awesome, thank you. Does any PCCEP member have any quick questions for Stephanie before we move to our next update?
She answered my my questions regarding the budget and the current status, and thank you, Stephanie. Appreciate it.
Quick question on that. With the procurement review or request process backlog, is there a time frame for getting through that currently?
Well, the reassignment of a new procurement person, I think, is going to help cut through that a lot. We were working with, a team that is had some unexpected backlog, I would say, that led to this, but I don't have a firm timeline. My goal is to just get it posted and try to encumber that fund before the end of this fiscal year. Yeah. That's the goal for sure. But it's a little bit up in the air on how quickly we'll get that feedback back from the technology review. So that can take a little bit of time, but I promise I'm advocating and checking in and reminding them, and probably not making a little bit of a pest of myself with them, but just trying to really, move forward and make sure everybody knows this is an important thing that we're working on.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, if you make progress, please let us know. So.
All right, thank you, Stephanie, for that update. Could we get the slides, please? Thank you. So our next update is about the Community Board for Police Accountability, or the CBPA. PCEP has been following this for a while, and there's some new movement, and they also have, there's a staff person now assigned to the CBPA. So we invited them here tonight to just share a little bit about the updates. So we have Kristen Thorpe, if you want to introduce yourself and chat a little bit.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to come speak with you all. So thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of PCEP and fellow community members. So nice to be here with you all. Just a little bit about me. For the last 23 years, I've worked in libraries, with my past position being a library director. The library is a great place to connect with community members from the full spectrum of our society. Of those 15 years, I've been a hiring manager. And I served on task force to make hiring more equitable. I've been a guest speaker at grad school classes to help folks navigate the application process for local governments. And I've been a trainer for new supervisors and managers on not only recruitment, but also onboarding and training. In addition to that, I've also worked pretty exclusively with advisory boards for about 10 years. And my goal is always to ensure that their volunteer time is valuable, and not only for them, but for the community and for the organization. So as you all know, in 2020, voters decided to change the police accountability structure in Portland. Between now and then, a group called the Portland Accountability Commission, or the PAC, was formed to give recommendations to the previous administration on that new oversight structure. After that work was concluded, city code was changed, union bargaining was negotiated, and then my office, which is the Office of Community-Based Police Accountability, or the OCPA, was formed along with the Community Board for Police Accountability. And together, the two, OCPA and CBPA, make up the new oversight system. I am the first hire of the OCPA, and I'm in the role of administrator and onboarding coordinator. I started on February 11th. And in addition to my typical onboarding work, my first week was focusing on learning as much as possible about the complex history of our city's police bureau and the accountability systems that have come before us. The city code states that members of the CBPA will be involved in the hiring of the director of my office, and that director will also serve at the will of that board. And so because of that city code, I am the first hire on a limited term basis and not the director, so that I can coordinate the recruitment for the first CBPA members. And once those members are in place, they will work to transition to the new oversight structure, and that's when that work can really begin. And I wanted to share a little bit about the application process and the development of it. City Council is going to be the ones who appoint the members to the CBPA board. Most of the scoring for the applications, not most, all of the scoring for the applications is going to be done by the nominating committee. The court delayed the appointment of the nominating committee so that new council members could appoint their representatives. The nominating committee were all selected before I started in mid-February. That committee is made up of 4 community representatives, 1 from each district, 2 community members who serve on the Citizens Review Committee, 1 representative from the city's Office of Equity and Human Rights, 1 representative who is designated by the Chief of Police, 1 representative from the Portland Police Association, and 1 representative from the Portland Police Commanding Officers Association. So there's 10 in total. In the summer of 2024, city staff from the mayor's office and the city attorney's office worked on a draft of the CBPA application. Once I came on board, I edited and streamlined their work, and I asked for city attorney's review and guidance as I finalize that document. That application went live on the morning of Friday, February 28th. And it was really important to get a quick turnaround in this application, not only because there are, as you all probably are aware, there are upcoming deadlines with the DOJ settlement that are coming up later this year, in addition to the fact that, our fellow community members all voted for this, not all, but 82% voted for this in 2020, and people are really eager for this new system to be in place. The City of Portland values are my values, and I used those values and city code to guide my work. It's best practices for equitable recruitments to have checks and balances throughout the process. The folks who worked on the final application, which is me and a representative from the city attorney's office, aren't going to be involved in the scoring of the applications or the appointment of the members. City council, while they didn't have direct involvement in the application, they also appointed members of the nominating committee and will be the ultimate approval of these board members. And then one of the other things we did to make some strategic edits for equity was we changed the question around background checks that may be different from other applications. We did not include a space for people to disclose anything that might turn up on a background check. And we did that to protect their privacy and not create unintentional bias when scoring applications. That can be a private conversation at the point of need, should that need arise. Another change that was made for the application is that every personal identification information from a person's application is redacted. And that's one way to just have the merits of the application speak for themselves. I wrote the first draft of the scoring guidelines and had a representative from the Bureau of Human Resources, somebody from the city attorney's office, and my boss, who is the deputy city administrator, Sarah Morrissey, provide feedback on the document before I finalized it. Members of the nominating committee also received a document as part of their training on overcoming bias in hiring, and they also received the enthusiastic guidance that they should be using their unique lens and values also to this process. Since the application has been open, we've worked to develop a website for the OCPA and announced this opportunity in many newsletters, including ones from the mayor, Rose City Connect. Some of the counselors have shared this. Thank you, PCCEP members, for also sharing this in your newsletter. And it was also in the Civic Life newsletter. I sent about 260 emails to community partners announcing this application and encouraging them to read the media release and connect with me if they had any questions. In addition to coming to PCCEP, I've also been to the CRC meeting, and I have a few other meetings coming up at neighborhood associations to help spread the word of this process. The nominating committee receives new eligible applications every week, and they are continuing to score on an ongoing basis. I want to reiterate that I don't see any of the applications that have been submitted. This way, when the nominating committee members ask me questions, we can focus on the process and the tools that they provided, and their scores can be given with their independent judgment. The application closes on Monday, April 14th at 5 p.m. So if there's anybody interested in applying, there is still an opportunity to get your application in. The nominating committee, after the application closes, will have 4 debrief meetings, and I will help facilitate those discussions with them. From there, we will have some next steps, which are still yet to be finalized. Those will be determined once those debrief meetings happen. And at a future date, The applicants who the nominating committee wants to put forward to council will go to council. Once the CBPA is seated and they complete their training, they will also have public meetings so that other folks can continue to stay involved in this process. So I really appreciate everybody's time and letting me speak. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I don't know if we have much time for questions, but if you could stick around and potentially answer questions in the chat, that would be super appreciated if PCEP members want to drop them in there. If anyone has like one burning question, but I feel like we need to move on. But yeah, thank you again. That was really helpful. A good overview of everything that's been going on. And we'll definitely stay connected. So
yes,
our
and I'm
next,
happy to stick around.
okay, thank you so much. Could you also drop your email in the chat too if folks want to reach you there? Thank you. So our next update, I believe, it's our final update of the evening. And it's an update on the wrongful death case of Michael Ray Townsend. We'll have Jason Renault from the Mental Health Alliance, which is one of the amici in the settlement agreement, share a bit about this update. So Jason, if you're there.
Hello, I'm Jason Renault. I'm with the Mental Health Association of Portland. I'm speaking on behalf of that organization, not on behalf of the Mental Health Alliance tonight. I'm talking for about 7 or 8 minutes about Michael Townsend. And many of you are very familiar with this. This is a small room, so forgive me for going over things people already know. But there are three, basically three official mechanisms to hold police officers accountable for misuse of force. And those are criminal law, administrative rules, and civil courts. We can set aside criminal law. No district attorney has prosecuted a police officer for use of force in Oregon since about 1970. And you've heard about efforts here in Portland to create an administrative mechanism to hold police officers accountable for use of force. So it's an opinion, but so far those mechanisms have not been effective. Now, the surviving family members can try to hold cities accountable through the civil courts, and even successful lawsuits against cities don't hold officers accountable, or their chiefs or trainers or the mayors. They're costly, and they inevitably injure the credibility of the justice system. And that's what this group is talking about all the time. That's the task of the PCCEP, the credibility of the justice system. So in 2020, state senators pushed through a seemingly minor change in the Oregon state law. Specifically, that's ORS, I'm going to put it in the chat, ORS 161242, and you can look that up. And it reads in part like this, the section that was changed. Prior to using deadly physical force upon another person, if the police officer has reasonable opportunity to do so, the police officer shall, two items here, consider alternatives such as verbal de-escalation or waiting or using other available resources and techniques if reasonable, safe, and feasible, or using a lesser degree of force, and give a verbal warning to the person that deadly physical force may be used, and provide the person with a reasonable opportunity to comply. Now, hold that legal language in your mind for a moment while I tell you about what happened to Michael Townsend. Michael Townsend was a man with addiction and mental illness, and he was killed by a Portland police officer in June of 2021 after calling 911 for help to get back to the hospital. His family sued and won, which is quite rare in two respects. First, lethal force cases almost always settle. In the Townsend case, the city attorney didn't make a minimal settlement offer, which to me indicates they expected to win. And second, the city attorney lost the case and the jury awarded the family $1 million. The city attorney was tripped up over that minor change in the law. In October of last year, about 4 or 5 months after the jury made that award, city council was asked by the city attorney to appeal the jury verdict. And so they, the city attorney, could get a better interpretation of the contours of the new law. The vote was 3-2 yes. And those 3 who voted yes all have left the city council since then. Now, to win this sort of appeal, and I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to use legal language, to win this sort of appeal, the city attorney needs to prove the judge made a mistake in the law or in jury instruction. The facts, what the officer did, are not in question any longer. But the city attorney didn't name the mistake that the judge made in her request to city council. What the city attorney told the council members was that she needed an appeal to better understand the law so that the city attorney's office could better instruct Portland Police Bureau members, presumably, how to use lethal force and not cause risk to the city. Now, I have asked City Council to withdraw the appeal and to pay the family the award for a couple of reasons. Foremost, the appeal is unlikely to succeed. The jury heard the facts and applied the law fairly and reasonably. The city attorney's desire for an interpretation of the contours of the law by the Court of Appeals is not a basis for a successful appeal. Second, the appeal is fiscally irresponsible. An appeal could take years to resolve, and the city would expect to expend significant resources filing and prosecuting that appeal, and they could still lose and still learn nothing. An initial hearing on that resolution to withdraw the appeal is tentatively penciled in for April 8th. The PCCEP should be concerned about the Townsend appeal because it sends the wrong message. An appeal disregards the findings of a Portland citizens on a jury who heard the facts, and it conveys to the public that the City Council approves of the use of lethal force. It fails to deter future misuse of force, and it tells the Portland Police Bureau that misuse of force will be defended. Further, it shows the council closing ranks behind the Portland Police Bureau rather than applying pressure to improve training and tactics and ability to de-escalate, all to reduce use of force. But most importantly, an appeal by the city prevents the Townsend family from moving forward. It deprives them of closure, and it chills any future surviving family member from seeking justice in a state court.
All right, thank you so much for sharing that, Jason. Again, running low on time. Does anyone have any questions or from PCCEP? You know that this is definitely something we can follow up on too. It doesn't have to happen right now. But just thinking about what PCCEP can do, we want to submit a letter or read a testimony or anything like that, there's options. So just something to think about. Does anybody have questions for Jason from PCCEP? Or Jason, can you also drop, I can send PCCEP your email too, if you want to drop it in the chat so we can ask those follow-up questions too. Okay. All right, I think we can move on to the next section. And I'm gonna thank you all for your updates. I wish we could spend 2 hours talking about each and every one of them, these meetings. can get tough sometimes. So hopefully we'll get to chat with each one of you more and figure all this stuff out. Now I'm going to pass it to my co-chair, Devante, to kick us off on this conversation.
Work. Thank you so much, Odelia, and thank you so much, Jason, for providing some of that information. It is a lot, but I think it is obviously a major event in our city's history and in our present. And as the appeal hearing is going to be coming up here, in our future as well. So I think it does set a precedent and what community engagement looks like and the faith that our community members have in our justice system. So I think that was important information. So thank you so much for speaking and touching on those topics. If we can get the slide here. Perfect. So we have invited Chief Day to attend today, and he is present. So I want to say thank you so much for attending and being present. On the topic of just police interaction with community members, and what that looks like, what it has looked like, there are some concerns that some community members have spoken up about, considering that there has been a bit of tension and some friction between PPB, the PPA, and elected officials. So we kind of just wanted to get some insight and perspective from PPB and Chief Day to kind of help clarify, I guess, the intent and the perspective and what PPB sees as far as a unified community engagement plan or policy when it comes to engaging with elected officials and just showing up in public community spaces. We are, the goal, I think, of everyone that's attending is to see a more, I don't want to say positive, but more trust being fostered between PPB and some of these community partners and community members. So just wanted to get some insight on what PPP has as far as a plan for that, and also how PPP leadership intends to ensure and assess whether impact matches intent when showing up in these public spaces. And I think it's an excellent opportunity for that to be clarified so that sometimes, as everyone's still adjusting and trying to foster that trust, sometimes when things aren't clearly stated as far as intent or plan, it can come across as concerning when really PPB could potentially be making an effort to just show up and connect with community. So we just wanted to get some insight and allow Chief Day to speak on that. Go to the next slide.
And Chief Day, before you get started, I just want to just let people know that there will be an opportunity for questions and answers in this section, but in just keeping mindful of time, we'll ask you to keep your comments and questions succinct and brief to the chief so that we can get as many people to voice in the space during this conversation.
Thank you. Thanks so much. For clarity, how much time do you want to spend on this section? I have Commander Hughes here also to speak about the free store. So I've never been short on words, and I want to make sure that we can have, dialogue. So Devante, do you have a recommendation in terms of when you want to have this part wrapped up so you can move into the free store conversation? And then I have another commitment later this evening, so I won't be able to stay like all the way till 8 or 8:15, but I want to make sure I'm available as much as possible.
I can help with that maybe. I think PCCEP and community, if it sounds good to you, I think you might tackle these topics together. And we could take a look at the next slide too. I think maybe maybe that would be the best approach. So our PPP folks here can kind of just respond in turn as things come up. So Devante or Odelia, do you want to briefly go over this section too? I know Odelia, you were involved in the crafting of this slide.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, another thing that we've been hearing from community members and at city meetings, like I'm sure everyone else in this room has, is about PPB response and activity around the community free store in downtown. And again, like coming from like similarly to Devontae's questions about what are like the intentions of showing up in spaces like that and what does community engagement look like? And I think we're feeling like I personally would love a little more oh, I'm not wording this correctly, but I'll ask our questions first and explain where I'm coming from. But yeah, we're wondering if there's a standard number of officers or cars dispatched to any given incident and how PPB determines what the scale of response should be to an incident. And then also wondering what the original complaint or call type is for this kind of incident. And we're wondering if there were any arrests made or charges filed. And I think we just kind of would like to hear like a general briefing this from PPB's perspective. It would be great to just hear your like what went into your thought processes and was behind your actions, because I think that's like a big question I've been hearing from the community. So we want to go back now. And Chief Day, if you want to start with those questions Devontae asked, and then we can move on however it seems fit to talk about the community free store.
Sure, thank you. And I'll just provide more of a high-level overview, which I think those questions are asking. If you want to get into details about the 3 council driven or council-oriented meetings that we attended, we can talk about those more specifically. But why don't I start for a minute and just talk a little bit about what I understand around community engagement, conversation in there about trust and trust building, and also relationship with elected officials. So I'll touch on that just kind of briefly. And then Commander Hughes can also touch on the free store. And I think the best benefit will be through, the Q&A probably, if we want to get into more specifics. But I've said this before, and I think I probably shared it with this group when I spoke when I first came on board, but I worked for 12 chiefs in my first 29 years, and every single chief opened up their goals and initiatives with restoring or building or gaining or earning or recovering trust in the community. And in 29 years, I never heard a chief say that they had achieved that goal. And it's often made me wonder, because trust is the foundation of which relationships are formed, and of course, what the credibility that the criminal justice system is based upon. If it doesn't have trust of those that it serves, then it doesn't have legitimacy. People aren't going to be inclined to want to obey the law, cooperate with law enforcement or with the criminal justice system. But I just am always stunned by the fact that I bet if you went to most major police department websites right now, you would find a chief talking about how they're striving for trust and trust in the community. And I did not want to establish a goal that I felt was unachievable or trying to catch smoke or wasn't measurable. I wanted to try and establish a goal that was actionable, both for police and for the community. And so my number one goal is to transform the dynamic between the police and the people we serve. And I use those words intentionally. To me, they're words of action. They require a response. They require effort. It doesn't mean something that we can sit around. It means something that we actually have to do. And so with that, of course, there's always going to be risk, and there's always going to be the potential for mistakes or misunderstandings, which I think certainly played out in these particular events around the council town halls. But overall, know that this has been a direction of mine since January of 24, and with the goal of doing those things that every chief has talked about: establishing trust, building trust, gaining trust, earning trust, so that we can continue to move forward with a legitimate system of criminal justice, including the role of police in that system. So since January, actually, when I started in October of 23, one of the first things I did was implement the walking beats during the holiday season downtown. And Intent behind that was simply to get officers out and about. We know that downtown sees a high degree of activity in holiday season. And so it was my direction that everyone, including myself, would participate. There was no expectation of enforcement. It was only presence alone and conversation and relationship building. And I did meet some initial hesitancy, but we got out there and for about 45 days or so, walked the streets of downtown and just visited with people, went into stores, went into businesses, had coffee, had lunch, and developed relationships. And I think that's key because we oftentimes don't know each other when we're in a crisis. It's hard to really connect with people when things are really hectic or usually on the scene of a police call. But if we can get to know each other and be seen otherwise, I believe that's not only good for the community, but it's good for the health of our officers. And our officers need to see their humanity, and they also need to see the humanity of others and how they show up in that space. And so I was trying to create space for them, and actually was encouraged to hear several officers towards the end of that time period mention how much they appreciated and enjoyed the chance just to be out, walking around, visiting. We were all in uniform. That was intentional. We wanted to be seen. We wanted to be visible. And a very, very, very small survey done showed a reduction in crime and a reduction in reported crime in those areas that we were intentional about just walking around, not making arrests, not making enforcement, just walking around and introducing ourselves and visiting with people. We did that again around the March Madness Women's Sweet 16 and Elite 8 in March around downtown, the Moda Center over in Northeast, where there was a high degree of traffic activity. Received great feedback from a lot of out-of-town folks who appreciated the opportunity to engage and visit with law enforcement as we were just out and about once again being visible. And we returned to that again this winter during the holiday season, where we expanded that citywide and we had officers walking in different places around the city. So this has been a direction of mine and a passion of mine of, very simply, when you ask what's the policy of community engagement, is how do we create space for police officers and community to come together that's not high stress, that's not crisis oriented, that's not call driven, that's not enforcement focused, simply showing up in the same space. So in November, after the election, and paying attention to the way that this new city council is going to be structured, I very intently began to focus on how we could engage with the districts and the counselors when January came upon us, knowing that this massive transformation of city government would actually lend to an increased amount of community engagement, because now constituents in the 4 districts have counselors to engage with. And I saw this as a great opportunity. We are in the districts more than any other city employee. Portland police officers are city employees, and we are in these districts 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So our presence is paramount in these districts, interacting with these constituents and looking for ways to solve problems and to transform that dynamic. So when January rolled around, and we saw the publicly posted websites on the city website about these meetings, once again, it was my direction that we should have people attend these. In fact, the very first one was we received an invitation. Captain Burley received an invitation to attend, in which him and another command officer went. And they were well received and they had good conversations. And so the future ones that we saw posted, I just said, yes, I want us to continue to attend. Where the breakdown occurred was the fact that I didn't give very clear direction in terms of numbers, expectations. This goes back to your question around policy. It's my belief and desire that when we show up, that we're going to be, engaging with folks. I've heard mixed reports about that. Some saying that we were engaging. Some community members saying we were engaging. Others saying we were not. Regardless, I don't think that we showed up appropriately. And I want to be clear that I do not believe this is the officer's responsibility or fault. It's really poor direction from my office on down in terms of expectations and really setting the tone. So the intent here was driven by me, directed by me, with the belief that we have now city officials, city elected officials, we have city employees that are working in these areas with these districts And what a better way to hear what's going on in the districts than to attend these publicly posted meetings. And that was the motivation behind the whole thing. It continues to be the motivation. I've since spoken with President Pertl-Guinea, and we've agreed that future ones, we will reach out to the city councilors ahead of time and check and see if they're comfortable with us attending. If they don't want us to attend, then we won't attend. There will definitely be crossover because we are regularly invited to community meetings. And there will be times, much like the recent public budget sessions, where I've been present and council's been present, and I don't call and ask about going to those. But so it's a work in progress, but this is clearly a clunky rollout that I take responsibility for. Was really just trying to take advantage of, to me, which is the public space. You have a city elected official holding a publicly held meeting promoted on the city website, and a city employee should be able to attend that. But there were many things I didn't take into consideration that we are now in attempt to try and make those more productive. So that's the 100,000-foot level view. I'm disappointed, but I'm still, committed to the effort, and want to continue to explore that, whether it be with PCCEP or others as we go forward. I certainly have more to say, but I'm going to take a breath and give everybody a chance to hear that, and then feel free to either pass it on to Brian for Free Store and we couple them up together, or let me know.
Yeah, thank you so much for answering those questions, Chief Day. I think it's incredibly encouraging that PPB is showing up to community events. And I love what you said about prioritizing relationship building, right? You have to start from somewhere, and it's not necessarily going to be perfect or incredibly smooth at all times, especially when, the circumstances that trust is attempting to be built. And so it definitely sounds like the intent was there. It's just that, when we show up in these public spaces, hopefully, whether it's been a long day or not, officers are taking advantage of that opportunity, whether, it's the senior officers or maybe just, some of the lower ranking officers to really connect and do that relationship building. And so I think that's probably, like you said, where the disconnect happened there. It sounds like that's where it happened. So thank you so much for being transparent and for really prioritizing that. Odelia, looks like you have something.
Yeah, I have some questions. I guess I'm curious about, because usually, like in my experience interacting with PPB, it's or like with community engagement, it's usually folks that are from the community engagement team or from your office, right? And so like seeing just like officers at these town halls was something I was curious about, because I was wondering if they were trained in community engagement versus like the community engagement I'm used to, where it's usually folks that are like higher up in the ladder.
Right. So a couple things. One, you're correct. I mean, oftentimes, it's whether it be command staff or we have officers that are, more, more skilled or more experienced or even more interested or more dedicated to the outreach effort, and the connection piece that you're speaking to. And one of the things, though, that I really am trying to emphasize in my tenure is that this is an organizational responsibility. And that does not rely upon me, and it also does not rely upon the newest patrol officer. It relies upon all of us. Portland Police Bureau is about 800 sworn personnel and about 300 non-sworn personnel. That's a significant bureau size in the city of Portland. And my goal and where I'm trying to go is to get all of us out there, to be all of us engaged, and be all of us in settings where we can represent and be available to our constituents, the Portlanders that we serve. Now, with that, and it's been articulated in some of the council meetings that we've spoken of and with our counselors, is that I also recognize the history of law enforcement, not only nationally, but in our own city. I recognize what this uniform represents. I understand the significance of a presence of a weapon. All of that is top of mind. And Yet at the same time, this is the role we play. This is our job. This is what we do. And I continue to use the term city employee, even though I realize our responsibility and influence is great. I want Portlanders to know and see and hear from those that they're essentially supporting with their participation in the process, in the public process. So I know now that in the future that, you know, one of the things this has demonstrated is that we need to be more clear. We need to be more intentional. This has demonstrated to me that obviously not everybody in the organization is seeing it as clearly as I'm seeing it in my head. And once again, that's not a criticism of them. That's my responsibility to be able to translate that to them so that they can meet that expectation. And so I've had plenty of conversations with the union president. I'm working with my command staff. I'm working with first and foremost, our operational team, because that's the uniform component that we see. But know that I am not content with just allowing this to be on the shoulders of either a few in senior ranks or a few in the officer ranks. I believe that this job is about public service. That's first and foremost, that our job is to provide that service at the highest level. And I think the way we do that best, I think the way it's safest for the community and safest for the police is when we can be in relationship with one another. And I think that's borne out through history of experience that I have, but also through you know, data and studies and things have shown that when we know each other, we can be more effective in solving and mitigating problems, lower levels of force, better outcomes, less incarceration, less reliance on the justice system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, but yes, your observation is correct, and it definitely drops some gaps. So what does that mean? We have done training in the past, and we are going to be looking ahead at ways that we can strengthen this from a practical standpoint, not only intentionality about how we give direction and who we select and who goes and what the expectation, but then we also have to look at our training. And we do a tremendous amount of work in the Advanced Academy around this with our new recruits. I'm recognizing now that maybe there will be a need to have some discussion around this, around our regular in-service training, because certainly this has gotten the attention of the organization and the awareness that, you know, we weren't as good as I wanted us to be on the rollout.
Yeah, thanks so much for answering that. I appreciate you taking accountability on that. I think like one thing too that I've also been thinking about is like former Commissioner Joanne Hardesty and how she often spoke about police accountability, and then it felt like she was sometimes met with like intimidation or smear campaign, like, or fear mongering, lots of different tactics to kind of push down the work she was doing. And so it's really hard to see that and then go from seeing like two folks on council who do talk about police accountability and the new CBPA to then that town hall response where there wasn't engagement, but just like people standing there in the back. And I think the hardest part for me to hear about was when Counselor Murillo asked who had sent the two officers at her event. They didn't tell her. And that was just really hard to see, because I know like we're able to have conversations about desires for transparency and accountability between the community and the PPB, but then when that's happening to your counselors, right, it's just a really like different message that I'm seeing portrayed. And I don't know, that wasn't a question at all. I don't know if you have anything you want to say to that though.
Yeah, a couple of things. One, yeah, you put it spot on. I mean, this is something that I really wished I'd been paying attention to, but when you get into the nuts and bolts, the mechanics, right? I'm really big on behaviors demonstrate our values. Like intent, people don't really care about your intention. They care about your behavior, because your behavior demonstrates your values. And in this particular case, you know, I did not take into consideration, for example, that we had a very contentious public safety subcommittee meeting, and then we had officers at Councilor Canal's town hall, you know, within a day or two of that. It didn't even register to me because I had been so focused on getting people out and getting people into these town halls that you know, but that was a misstep. That was something that we should have considered at a very minimum, reached out to Councilor Canal. With Councilor Murillo's town hall that you're referencing, you know, I did not consider the fact that she used to work in Commissioner Hardesty's office. I wasn't here during that time frame. So once again, that's just a, you know, it's just a misstep. It's unfortunate that that's the way it started. And, you know, I apologize for that. I'm committed to getting better, but I'm also committed to continue to try and maximize these places because they are drawing a high number of folks. I mentioned to council yesterday, the subcommittee, that although I realize that I've, you know, bitten off more than I can chew, I did not anticipate council being as available and as present in their districts as they're being. And the reality is, you know, we're not going to be able to keep up or match that pace given their commitment to their constituents and how they're showing up. So, you know, we're evaluating all of this, but I still think there's space, and I'm hoping, and it was mentioned yesterday by Councilor Smith, you know, that maybe there'll be a chance to be invited and, you know, create opportunities for us to be able to have this discussion with people in those districts. And we're still going to traditional neighborhood business association meetings, as I said, public budget meeting, you know. So, but those were misses that I wish that I had considered and not started out that way. And in terms of the historical piece, although I wasn't here, I would agree that the PPA behavior, you know, from what I've read and from what I've heard, was absolutely unacceptable in that time period. And I understand why there is that concern, and certainly understand it better now. It just the lack of experience didn't allow me to recognize that in making these, you know, decisions or directions. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for answering that. Just so everyone knows, anyone is welcome to ask questions if you want to raise your hand. Community members, counselors, anyone. And Kip, I see your hand.
Yeah, yeah, I don't want to feel like, I don't want this to feel like a pile on, Chief Day. And I appreciate you, like Odelia said, taking some responsibility for setting the tone and culture for being involved in these public type meetings, which I do think are important. They're part of the challenge of feedback that I was brought to my attention from several people was also a perceived disparity between what officers showed up to what meetings, especially after that pretty contentious and I watched live that public safety meeting, and it felt more contentious than it should be, given the conversations that were trying to be had. And I know I'm characterizing, I apologize, but it the trust building is critical. That's why we're all here right now, to have better outcomes, to have more trust, to make sure that all community feel equally represented and feel an equity of engagement. But there was Council Vice President Koyama Lane had mentioned that no one had shown up to her public meetings. I believe a few other councilors had mentioned that. So even if that was not an intent, it's how it's perceived. And that's really critical that we don't, like you say, it's PPB is a learning organization, but it being very heightened cognizant of those types of interactions, I feel needs to be really critical, because it immediately sets back one step forward, 2-3 steps backwards. And we are in a brand new time of representation. The fact that there are so many public things happening. It's a great problem to have, right? But we're also in a heightened sense of tension throughout politics in general. So that extra level of sensitivity, I think, is really critical. And it makes our conversations, I'd much rather be talking about other things than this, to be honest, to get to the end of this entire process that we're going through. So, and I'll leave it at that. It's not, again, really a question, but just wanted to express that multiple people have reached out to me, and also kind of including some of my own thoughts in this.
No, thanks. I hear you. And yeah, like I said, it's a swing and a miss, and you know, hoping to move on. We learn from it, and you know, I'll be the first to say there'll probably be others. I mean, the reality is that you know, the only thing you can do perfectly is to do nothing. And the reason I'm here tonight, and the reason that I've owned this in every public setting I've been in, is because then I talk about transforming the dynamic between the police and the people we serve. I think that this goes both ways. That this relationship, it's incumbent upon all of us to be curious about one another, to learn from one another, to recognize when we're making assumptions. I appreciate that, Kip. Just a minute ago, you did that in your statement. I just think it's important. And at the end of the day, I do think this is a tough nut to crack, because there are real harms. I talk openly about police violence and history of policing. I thought Jason did a great overview of the review that he just did on the appeal. Jason and I have had lots of conversations. We don't agree on everything, but you know, the ability to be in that space, have those conversations, and then try to find solutions and understanding, knowing that they are complex, ever evolving. When we're here on a screen, it's a lot easier than when we're standing on the street corner. And the other part I want to emphasize too is, you know, I've heard from numerous people who have told me and told our officers how much they appreciated us being at the town halls. So it goes, you know, this whole thing is a great opportunity for all of us to learn. And I want to just recognize I've had some positive conversations with the counselors about this. Both reached out to me, Councilor Merrill and Councilor Knoll, and I'm grateful for that. And we've had some conversation and shared some information back and forth. So I think the system is organically working. And I appreciate you recognizing, Kip, that it is new, the tension around the evolving of that, as well as outside influences, et cetera. So I just want to affirm what I heard. So thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for that.
Next, we'll hear from Babs, and then Babs, after you, we'll go to Barb, and then we welcome Commander Hughes to step in and share, provide a briefing about the free store. All right, Babs?
Thank you so much. Can you all hear me okay?
We can.
Thank you very much. Babs Finelli here, 76-year-old lifelong Portland resident, currently in District 2, Northeast. So first of all, thanks for acknowledging that you made mistakes, okay? And this whole process is a transition. This whole process, there's a steep learning curve for everyone. And that includes we citizens as we try and make sense out of this. Mike, I'd be remiss though, since I have you here, sir, I am a strong advocate, strong supporter of Portland Street Response, expanding that as much as our budget possibly will allow. Your thoughts, your response about Portland Street Response. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly. I know that's a little bit off topic, but I want to respect that question quickly and just say that I'm a believer in any alternative response method we can develop. I've said for many years that we have relied too long on the police to suppress problems rather than fix problems. And it burdens me and saddens me to send our officers to situations that they are neither equipped, prepared, trained, or skilled in trying to manage. And the downside is that, you know, for decades, that's what we have relied upon. And the transition is difficult because it costs a lot of money to stand up a new program, and you can't stand up a new program. It can't get rid of the old program until you have a new program. And that's the difficulty and the challenge before council is how do we maintain that so that the transition, the people don't suffer in that transition. But I'm not at all pushing against the Portland Street Response model or chat or PS3s or any of these programs where we can send somebody besides police. It's just, once again, the complexity of it and the devil's in the details.
Thank you.
Chief. Barb.
Hi there, Chief Day. Thank you for coming and addressing all of this stuff. I haven't personally been at any of these meetings, but I guess the thing that I'm hearing that is of most concern is that when the officers were asked who sent them, they did not openly say who sent them. And I don't understand the point of like saying my lieutenant sent me, but not saying who your lieutenant is, because that can obviously easily be found. So it just seems like officers are trying to make things contentious in that way. And I'm hoping maybe you can say you're having discussions with them about what they're saying to the public in public and how they're acting.
Yeah, so we're having those conversations. Lieutenant Consul is the afternoon shift lieutenant at East Precinct, who was the one who directed those officers, and we've had conversations with him as well. Yes, we are, and this holistic approach, working with throughout the organization. We had a meeting here, I don't know, a week or two ago with all our senior leaders, so short answer is yes. I'll try and keep it short. Thank you.
Commander Hughes, we turn to you to share a bit about the Free Store incident.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for allowing me time in your meeting to talk about this. So the Community Free Store PDX has been going on since, I think, we became aware of it, I guess, in the fall of 2024. And where we became involved with this was from some complaints in the community, not only businesses, but also some residents, about activity blocking sidewalks and at times blocking the street. And so officers have gone out and noticed that at times the street was blocked. One time the street was blocked, Flanders, 3rd Avenue to 4th Avenue. And that is a concern for us when that happens. And so I'll kind of fast forward to the most recent thing where there's been some social media posts about a lot of police officers showing up. So on, let me look at my calendar here real quick. I want to make sure I have the dates correct. On March would be 7th. I think that's, or no, the 6th. That's Thursday. That's the date. Thursdays are the date that the Community Free Store operates in the Old Town area. I think around 5:15 p.m. And we received through direct communications as part of this community engagement process. You go out in the community and meet people. In fact, it's one of the ways I met one of our current city councilors. Councilor Maria was at an event that I happened to be at, and just started talking to her. This is before she was even a councilor. And so started building a relationship there, traded emails, just open, wanted to be open if there was any questions related to police, because she was running in District 3, which is also where I work. And so, but anyway, the officers go out in the community and they make these connections, and we make them with business owners. I text with business owners often, also with service providers. Most of the major service providers in Old Town are able to reach me via email or phone at any time. And then community as well, residents, people that live in the neighborhood. When we attend community meetings, I've been an officer in Portland since 2003, and I was a neighborhood response team officer. So a little bit more of that neighbor focus, but for 7 years, one of my main jobs was to attend neighborhood association meetings, and I did that regularly, and I was welcome in their space to do that. We kind of got away from that a little bit over the years with staffing, and we're starting to come back and re-engage in that way under Chief Day's leadership. And anyway, back to Community Free Store. So we got some information that there was a large group assembled and that the sidewalk was blocked. And this is going to be on Northwest 3rd Avenue, just kind of north of Flanders there, right in the area of Lansu Chinese Garden. And I'm very familiar with Lansu Chinese Garden. The executive director there, she's one of the community members I spoke of. It's a nonprofit there. She has my phone number. We've talked many times about various issues that come up in Old Town, and how their business integrates with that space. But they have two spaces. They have a Lansu Chinese Garden, culturally significant garden right there at the intersection of 3rd and Everett. It's beautiful. If you've never been there, I highly recommend going. But they also have the parking lot north of there. That's their parking lot as well. And they have plans to develop that. And so this is the area where the Free Store PDX has been setting up on the sidewalk there. And most recently on that March 6th, I think it was. And the tables and the people were were on that sidewalk in a way as to prevent pedestrians from moving freely on the sidewalk, which is a concern for us. There was also tables blocking the driveway to get into that flat parking lot. And I have been to many events at Lansu Chinese Garden, and they're open throughout the day, so people will come and go. And at times I have seen people with disabilities park in that parking lot and then use the sidewalk to get to Lansu Chinese Garden. We've also worked with the city's impact reduction program to do our best to keep that area free of tents. At times tents have been there in that space, and it makes it a challenge for people with walkers and such to get to the garden. So we received information that there was a large group there doing the community free store, which we're already aware of, but that it was a little bit bigger than had been in the past. And so 3 police officers went there. One of them is what we refer to as an event liaison officer. He has extra training in how to de-escalate and diffuse situations involving crowd situations. And we use them most often in protest situations, but this officer was already on duty. He's a sergeant. And that sergeant went down there. And every time we have gone down when the events are occurring, we've always tried to take a diplomatic approach on educating what the laws are with regards to blocking the sidewalk and the street, and try to gain voluntary compliance. And in this case, when the sergeant and the officers arrived there to try and gain some compliance to open the sidewalk and open the driveway to this parking lot, they were immediately met with profanity and threats. That's with the body worn cameras on nowadays, we can look back and review all the things. And to be honest with you, it was sad. It was a sad thing to watch for me. But those are all protected free speech, First Amendment free speech. There's no mandate that people like the police, and I understand that. But we were met at that time with a lot of hostility and some threats. And the officers, there were more people there that were yelling at the officers these kinds of threats, and that's not normal. For us to go to events and have that kind of engagement. There was no threatening behavior by the police officers. I watched the video, and there was a lot of threatening behavior by people that were present. Now, I don't know if they were people that were part of this community free store. I don't know enough about it to say they were or they weren't. They would. It's my understanding that this is a kind of a collective of people that gather down there to do these things, and so I don't know. But the officers felt that they needed to call for additional officers to come down to the scene and be present and assist them while they maintained order and did their best to try and open up sidewalks and issue citations. The officers could have towed the cars that were blocking the driveway to the parking lot, but did not. They issued citations to those cars. And then while we were there, some of the anti-police people that were there walked into the roadway. And there are laws that require that you cross at intersections and that you not cross mid-block. And so the sergeant on scene issued, I think, a total of 3 citations. Some of the people did not want to provide their names and were briefly handcuffed while they were identified. Once they were identified, they were issued citations, and then the event was over. For us, we disengaged from the group, allowed things to calm down a little bit, and went about our evening. So no arrests were made. The following week, we were there with community members. Some community members came down. We thought it might be better for community members to engage with the people that were there to kind of maybe give their perspective on what it's like to have a business or live in that community and how this is affecting things when the group is there. And there were no arrests in that situation either. I think that the community free store opted to set up a block over and not block the driveway of the garden there, which was great. It's my understanding that there was no incidents. A deputy district attorney was invited to come and join and observe what was going on there. And a representative from the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office did join at our request just to take a look and see what their perspective was. And the information I got back was that they observed and saw what was going on and did not believe there was any, criminal nexus to what was going on. And I don't, based on what I know about this, I don't think, aside from blocking driveways and blocking the streets, it's a crime to block the streets in Oregon. Can't do that. And you could be arrested for blocking the street. It doesn't always get to that. Usually compliance ensues and people, once they're educated on the law, move out of the street. But the district attorney's office gave us that advice. We also consulted with the city attorney's office on the matter, and really not really a criminal nexus to this. So that night ended with no citations, no arrests. And then last week, I kind of was made aware, because of the rising temperature of things, and you all probably saw some of the social media stuff. So I asked that we take a pause from any police engagement with the group that was down there. And I think that maybe some of the city commissioners went down there. I think Commissioner Green went to try and observe what was going on. And when he was there, he found that the group had appeared to have voluntarily relocated to another area, which was less impactful, which was good to hear. But the commissioner was able to go down and observe things and speak with constituents down in that area. So that is where we are with the community free stores. My understanding of the community free store, I mean, I don't object to it. I mean, it sounds great. It's low barrier intent to hand out hygiene supplies, food and clothing and stuff like that from the pictures I've seen on social media. There is that anti-police sentiment, but like I said, there's no, that we're used to that at times with, not everyone likes the police, and I understand that. So I can kind of see both sides sort of this thing, and here the police are kind of in the middle. I saw a question in the chat. I don't know who put it in there. Somebody asked about permitting for that, and I don't know of any permitting for tabling events that go on. That we're not involved in that space as far as tabling goes with permits. So I don't have an answer for that. Probably not a bad idea for that to happen. I would like to share though that I do have some connections in the social service space down there, and when it comes to events that are very kind of on the boots on the ground, directly interfacing with people that are suffering. You may have anyone in this group here heard of Night Strike? I can only see. I see some people say, yeah, nodding their heads. Yes, that's gone on for 20 years, and it's under the Burnside Bridge, and it's every Thursday night. And it started when I was here in Portland as just a police officer, and working in Central Precinct. And I remember when it first happened, a large group of homeless people would gather and people were like, what's going on over here? And then, we learned a little bit more about it, and has operated for 20 years with little to no interaction from the Portland police. There's some structure involved with this. They have permits that they take out with the city of Portland Parks and Rec to do that event, because I believe it's in Waterfront Park underneath the Burnside Bridge. It's gone back and forth on both sides of NATO over the years. They take out insurance. They have training, de-escalation training for their staff, volunteers. They have what else? They have a set routine that when they set up, and then when they take down, and then they clean up when they're done. So a lot more structure is involved with what they do. But no, at times people come down to downtown. For those of you that are familiar with Portland, it seems like most of you are. we have a high concentration of our unhoused population in Old Town there. And so a lot of social services down there as well that provide care for them and services. But it's not uncommon for people to come and want to provide things like at times tents, clothing, food, and things like that. And so really it's a challenging space for the Portland police to kind of be in, but like I said, I can see both sides. Hopefully that explains kind of some of where we are with that. Is there, I see some hands raised. Is there a moderator that can help maybe ask the question to me?
Thank you, Commander. Odelia?
Yeah, thank you for explaining that. I think I just have a few clarifying questions. I didn't quite catch how these calls were initiated. Was it through a 911 call to BOIC, or it was direct communication with you, or?
No, direct communication with my staff. So I have captains, lieutenants, and sergeants from the community, engaging with them on alerting them to what was going on here. I have to look back to see the times I spoke about when the streets were blocked. I have to go back and look and see if there was a combination of community alert and or calls to 911. I don't believe there were calls to 911. I would hope not. That would be probably a non-emergency call, but I'd have to research that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and then you also mentioned like the cops, like the few who showed up people were telling them certain things. And is that what made them call for backup? Is there, because like people were yelling at them, presumably? Is that kind of what led to more officers coming?
Yeah, that's part of it. The threats that were made, it's not, I mean, taking it to that next level and threatening the officers was a little bit of an escalation on the part, but also kind of free speech too. We're starting to get into some complicated areas there with threats. You could end up with a crime in that situation. It's definitely concerning behavior. I hope everyone on the call can agree with that. But no, it was that plus the officers wanted to accomplish the mission, which was to open the sidewalk and to open the driveway to the parking lot. So with that many people there, they didn't feel as though just with 3 of them that they could do it safely. They just wanted to basically resolve this problem and leave.
Gotcha.
But that's part of why. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that explain?
Yeah, that I understand. So sorry, I have so many questions. Devontae, do you want to go and then I'll ask more?
Yeah. So first, yeah, I appreciate your overview of the situation, Commander Hughes, and it was very insightful. I guess I'm of a similar sentiment as yourself that it definitely, there are aspects of both sides of it that I can, I guess, resonate with and if anything, understand, I guess, the thoughts behind both sides of the conflict. I guess, and it is unfortunate. And so because, you have business owners, you have residents that maybe are being impacted by this gathering, and then you have the group of community members who are just trying to do a community service and help those in need. So, I mean, both are equally important in my perspective. Um, I guess, was there ever a thought or recommendation of, I know that they eventually moved on their own and they kind of relocated after, the conflict. Was it mentioned by anyone from the attorney's office or by any members of law enforcement to the people, the event organizers, that inquiring is if they are able to move, or maybe just brainstorming to find a better location that might be optimal to better assist those in need without causing any negative impact to the community members in the residents or the business owners in the area. It's just one of those things where, I don't know if the city has a precedent of when these kind of organizations pop up, of maybe, you know, interacting with them and trying to work together and collaborate to find out what might be the most effective location, timing of these giveaways to make sure that it's not an issue for anybody involved. Was there any conversation about any of that? I guess for the sake of just wanting to see the best outcome possible for the residents, for PPB, for those transient individuals in the community.
Absolutely. Oh no, absolutely, totally. Yeah, that would be my preferred goal here. Is that could happen, but you know, and I start talking about perceptions. I looked into a little bit about Community Free Store, and you can go on and take a look and see, but there's very reluctance to engage with government, and so and I can see, you know, a point of view. I can see that point of view, and so that makes it challenging. So my hope is, I don't know, I value relationship building. Um, I would like to come back to this meeting someday because you all seem really engaged, and I know you just met me and you don't know me, and I don't know any of you. But I don't know. I think so much can be accomplished over time if you take a moment to listen to where people are coming from and understand that point of view. And then over time, you know, we oftentimes show up in these uniforms I'm wearing today, and it's like, we need this done now, change this behavior now. And, you know, when there's violence and crimes and stuff like that, we need to solve that right now. But, you know, for other things, I kind of lean towards the relationship building side. I like that. I think when people understand where others are coming from, even a group that's anti-police, you know, and to answer your question too, Devontae, is I don't necessarily think police are probably the best ones to engage in that way and try and gain that, you know, that trust and maybe that dialogue and that relationship to maybe adjust kind of what's going on there so that everyone can coexist in the same space without conflict. So yeah, I applaud Commissioner Green for you know, for trying and trying to start at least building some kind of relationship. I really appreciate him doing that. I don't remember in, you know, a time when city council person actually did that. But I thought it was great. And but yeah, no, we'll still you know, advocate for other avenues of the city to be engaged in this way and try and sort of negotiate a solution, I guess, if you will.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. You know, it's relationship building, I think, is it's one of the reasons that I was really driven to join PCCEP, is because I think that there are so many opportunities for there to be more positive interactions between law enforcement and community. And I think we so often hear about the negative interactions, but we don't hear enough about the positive ones. And so I think in my ideal world, you know, maybe there would have been, and I know that you said that your officers were immediately met with hostility and profanity. But even if there would have been some sort of way, and I know I'm kind of just being idealistic here, possibly, but if there would have been a way for even one of the officers to say, hey, is there anything I can do to help? And and also, can we maybe relocate this just over here, you know, so that we're not blocking the driveway? And, you know, an officer maybe help give out some of the items that the community members had. You know, those kinds of, you know, collaborative activities between law enforcement and community. You know, and I really like what Chief Day said about, you know, officers just kind of walking a beat in the community, building relationships. And, you know, one of the things that I really would like to see is some sort of, you know, even if it's like a community walk, right, between, you know, with law enforcement and community members walking for a cause, or, you know, coffee with a cop, or, you know, something like that. I want to see more activities and events like that in the city. So thank you so much for, you know, speaking about you know, officers and even yourself having a relationship with community members, business owners, because I think that that's also extremely important. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go to Leslie next. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you so much. I feel like, you know, Devontae finished it off really well, so I don't want to like rehash things or anything like that. But I don't also mean to sound to try to come off as a skeptic, but you know, I'm in these decentralized community groups that do not work with the government for specific reasons that they don't, want to engage, their community aid organizations and things like that. They typically do have a very good understanding of what they can and can't do to stay off of the police radar. Like they know I need to be here, I need to not do this, like that is like very present in most of these organizations when they're engaging with police. So for me, when I was hearing about this, to me very much it sounds like it's very similar to the pre-test stops, right? Where now you have a bunch of police, and now any minor thing that may not be a big deal becomes a big deal and becomes an infraction. So like, for example, I'm thinking about the citations that were given out that were a result of like, essentially jaywalking, right? They were jaywalking citations. Like I walk around Portland every day. I see jaywalking every day. I see jaywalking in front of police officers. So for there to be the citation, it just seems, again, I don't mean to come off as a skeptic. I see your perspective. I see both sides of it. It still doesn't click for me because these organizations, like that, there was like 12 police officers when we have a resource constrained police force that takes 30 minutes to respond for calls for this specific type of action. So again, I don't need to like rehash what was already said or anything like that. I definitely understand like both perspectives and all the perspectives that were shared today. I just felt like that needed to be said.
Thank you. No, I value that input, Leslie, and I hear what you're saying. And, there's an aspect of kind of trying to restore some order, but at the same time, I do hear what you're saying there. And, my hope would be kind of a coexist with the group.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Councilor Green.
Thank you so much for letting me participate. And I won't use up much time. I just wanted to say that I didn't have much success interacting with this group for reasons that I think Leslie already articulated. There's a deep mistrust for not just police, but people from the government, and I'm from the government. So, but this is my district. I believe very strongly in mutual aid efforts as a praxis, and if anyone is interested in helping me think through creative ways to address this, and it might be someone else having that conversation. I don't know. I'm at the table. My email is counselor.green@portlandoregon.gov. Please reach out. I'm on this issue. So thanks for Brian for helping me kind of give me the space to not engage and see if there was a way to kind of take a non-policing solution to this. And that's the role I would like to play in this. So thanks, guys.
Thank you, Councilor Green. Kat?
Hi, thank you. My name's Kat. I used to be the executive director of Sisters of the Road, which is also located in Old Town. And I was there for about two years. Every other Friday outside of our office and outside where the cafe was located, which was Davis and 6th, tables would set up and give out dinner, clothing, and supplies. Never once did the cops show up. And this overlaps with when the Free Store was also starting. And I just want to contrast that because some of this is also the animosity of some of the businesses and residences down there. There has been problems in Old Town in terms of nonprofits expanding and what kind of nonprofit expands. So Lansu is expanding. Everyone's glad about that. I love it too. It's a great space. However, the executive director of Lansu, Elizabeth Nye, and the owner of Society Hotel, Jesse Burke, have been working as part of the Old Town Community Association for several years, and they will boast about it in the meetings, about how they have direct phone numbers to certain council members in the past or their staff, and how they would walk the streets with Sam Adams, and how they had some of the cops' numbers, and they had these things. So if there's a direct call, most likely it emanated from them. If there's something outside that's too close to their business, they will complain. I don't think that's fair, because when Sisters called the police when somebody was stabbed on our corner, My staff person, who was the kitchen manager at the time, was told by 911, cops don't go to sisters. So how do you reconcile these sorts of things? I'm not saying that it is absolutely your fault. I know that you and Chief Day are trying your best to change this perception, you know, and you're trying to change that the impact of when cops show up is negative. But how do you then control cops who have a bias? How do you control when businesses have a bias? I've gone up in articles against Aaron Schmaltz. I've gone up in articles against other owners in Old Town. And there is this animosity. It cannot be denied. It cannot be hidden. And it has to be addressed even in how the cops execute and carry out their duties. If you're going to cite some folks for jaywalking because they're right there and they're quote unquote easy targets, was somebody brought up a few minutes ago, there's easy targets every day of people crossing the street, not at the corner, in front of cop cars, in front of cops. I've seen cops drive by folks on 3rd Avenue who are in the street and never stop and cite them. So sure, you needed to somehow control that situation. At the same time, when cops show up to situations, it activates people. The free store has tables, has supplies, gives things out, and they only stay about 2 hours and then they go. It's been going on for a long time, longer than it's been probably on a lot of folks' radar. It's only on the radar now because it got a little closer to Lansu with the fenced off sidewalk on Flanders where it used to set up. If it sets up by 6th and Davis, I can guarantee you won't get a phone call. These things have to be addressed as well. What is the fairness? What is the equity?
All great points, Kat. I agree with you. With Sisters of the Road, I was always curious and intrigued by that. And curious if it would be okay if I were ever to go in there. And I have the ability as a precinct commander to operate in plain clothes and come out and be more a part of, community events at times. I'll come and meet with people. A lot of our service providers prefer that I not come in uniform. And so I'm happy to do that. Throw on, it's more comfortable for me to be in a polo shirt and whatever. But yeah, it's amazing that the difference. You're so right. And how the police show up and activate people. And I notice that too when I'm going into those spaces, when I'm in a uniform like this, and people see the uniform, and that means different things to different people, and I certainly respect that. And I want you to know I've been at Central Precinct since June, and I do have a commitment to ensuring that we can all coexist in the space down there together. And I value what you have to say. I value what all of you have to say. And I will do my best to encourage the officers to see things from different points of views. As you were mentioning this, I thought to myself, there's times I probably could have invited officers to come with me in plain clothes to come to these service providers and hear their perspectives on things, as well as business owners and all stakeholders equally. So just thinking through this, and I thank you for your point of view. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And you just kind of addressed what I wanted to kind of ask about. We've had conversations before about, I don't know, this is classified as a public order event. Maybe it reached that level of escalation, but also we've had discussions about alternative means to engage with people that can avoid an escalation with whoever the incident commander or whomever is on site is. And I think my question I saw some of the Instagram posts, and I've seen the stories out there. I don't have firsthand knowledge of exactly what happened, but I guess my primary question was there not a better way to engage and interact that would hopefully not lead to a more confrontational aspect? And I truly appreciate, I've mentioned this in multiple conversations, there are people who absolutely do not like police, and you're never going to really bridge that, right? And that's okay. They're also part of our community and society. But ideally, when you have a confrontational situation, my hope and goal is a way to diffuse and de-escalate rather than engage and escalate. And what little I understand of this event, it seemed like there was engagement and escalation. And I'm hoping maybe this is a good place to start on how do we make sure that doesn't happen again.
I love it, Kip. I'm there with you. You put it amazing. I'm right there with you.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, that's what I'd like to see.
Dr. Elizabeth?
Kat, I am so grateful to hear what you know about how some of those blocks work, because I don't live there. I don't have reasons to go there. I would never know about how the insiders and I'm not sure outsider is the right word, but others, at least that. I would never know how those alliances and competitivenesses work. And I dare say that there are people in the police department who don't know how they work, really. I am so pleased to hear it. I look forward to hearing more about the neighborhood you were speaking about, Kat, but also about other neighborhoods. I would like all of us to hear more about how these neighbor alliances, neighbor friendships work. It's clearly true that they are there, and they can make things work or they can make things worse. I'm a Jane Jacobs person, so I'm big into personal friendships and alliances. And it's inevitable that there will be competitiveness, but knowing where it is a real benefit to all of us. So thank you so much, Kat.
You, Dr. Allen. Odelia, this is go ahead and ask your question, and this is the last question of this section.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I think I just want to build on what a few people have shared. I think going off of what Leslie shared about jaywalking, the only other time I've seen or heard of folks being arrested or detained or cited for jaywalking is at protests, specifically the protests at Portland State last year, around Palestine and asking the school to divest. And so it's hard to see jaywalking being used as a tool in a similar way there. When again, I mean, I jaywalk like all the time and I have privilege to do that, right? But yeah, I think I just wanted to like make that connection briefly, and then also with what folks are saying about like we're hearing a lot about community or about police being underfunded and understaffed, and then seeing like 20 or 20 officers and 11 cop cars at this like community free store event, and then hearing about long wait times, and it's really hard to understand from the outside how issues are being prioritized and calls are being prioritized when there's so much police presence at something that is like community oriented and safe. It is only like the only crime is taking up space on the sidewalk. So I guess my point in saying all of this is I think it's tying back to a question PCCEP has been investigating for a while of if different people are policed differently, and why that happens or how. And so I think like the fact that there are ties to the DA's office in this instance for people passing out free stuff when I have not heard of that happening before, and because of a direct relationship of the Society Hotel owner to the DA's office, it's hard for this to not feel like favors to wealthy community members, whereas in other instances this wouldn't happen. And again, like, just because they were saying anti-police things, as you said, doesn't make it illegal or wrong. There's a difference between like saying mean things and threatening, right? And that's where like the First Amendment comes in. And so I guess all of that to say is it can be hard for me not to assume that like more cops showed up because people were saying anti-police things or things like that, and that led to more escalation and further intimidation, and now has kind of created a pattern at these community free stores. And I'm really grateful for everything you shared and everything that Councillor Green shared. And I think that hopefully like this distribution can continue. But I don't know if you have any thoughts on like what Kat shared of how different areas are policed differently depending on vicinity to certain like businesses, and how that kind of plays into when and where police show up. Sorry, that was like an extremely long point.
No, it's fascinating to hear your point of view. It's cool. No, this is a tough spot, right? So police are between, and commissioners are in a tough spot too, because they have constituents that are in the business community, constituents that want to go down and provide mutual aid and try to understand where both sides are coming from and try to find that middle ground. That's a challenge, and it's much easier when we go to a scene where there's a crime, right? Where like somebody's robbing a bank. That's pretty clear. That person is robbing a bank, terrorizing the people. We need to make an arrest and solve that problem. These problems are much more in depth and involved, and part of it for me is hearing your perspective and all the views here today, which I appreciate. Just to be clear, the district attorney's office, I have heard numerous times now that that there are people in that community in Old Town that have been involved with campaigns and stuff like that. The district attorney came at our request. We wanted a district attorney's perspective on things. And the district attorney that came is a deputy district attorney who is a neighborhood district attorney assigned to my precinct. So for problems that we deal with in the precinct, I can have him provide advice. He has spent many years in the human trafficking world along 82nd Avenue doing amazing work and trying to get people out of the human trafficking world up there. And so that was his previous assignment in the DA's office. Now he's a neighborhood DA. And we've had neighborhood DAs since I was a police officer back in way back when it was Lori Abraham. And she helped us problem solve with people that were chronically getting arrested and trying to figure out, okay, arrest is not working here. What other things can we do with this person? And so neighborhood DAs are amazing. And I'm really glad that we have district attorney or deputy district attorney Jathusa here to help. And like I said, his perspective on things was he really, there doesn't appear to be criminal nature involved with what was going on here, which I appreciate. But yeah, we will continue working on the space. From what I've seen, the community free store, it looks low impact to me as well. Handing out some food and some socks and some hygiene kits. If I was in that position, I'd put myself in that position. If I was in that position, what that would be like, and I can't imagine. I have never been in that space, so I just have to imagine what it's like and talk to people. Dr. Allen, you brought up a very important point to understand these spaces in these communities. I don't know if you can see or not, but I have a sunburn because I was in Waterfront Park all day today. I did my meetings at Waterfront Park. The cherry blossoms were beautiful. I did my work as the commander of the precinct, but I was out and engaged with people in the community. I saw what was going on in Waterfront Park and built, relationships with people that were visiting from, outside of Portland, people that were in Portland. It was awesome. And Dr. Allen, I highly recommend engaging and getting out into the community. It's fascinating. We had some excellent conversations today. In fact, one person I talked to, we were talking about the challenges that Portland face. And I pointed down to the sidewalk and I said, if you look really hard at that sidewalk amongst all these beautiful cherry blossoms, you're going to see some dirt on that sidewalk. And if you want to focus on that dirt and stay in that space, then you can. Or you'd be like everybody else in this waterfront park and look at the cherry blossoms and, you know, the good and what's going well in Portland. So I apologize. I went off on a tangent. I'm gonna stop now.
I just want to let everyone know we do need to wrap here. And so I want to give Chief Day and Commander Hughes the chance to say goodbye and let you off the hook here. But thank you so much for a very frank and informative discussion. I learned a lot, and I think, yeah, I hope everyone did. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks again. Thanks for showing up and for volunteering. I do want to comment on the appearance of favoritism. I think that's an absolute accurate observation, but I also want to recognize, and I think Commander Hughes identified this, but I want to infer sort of the complexity of the world we work in. And we regularly are in contact with community members, not just business owners, outreach workers. I mean, you name it. I have sat down with billionaires and I have sat down with the poorest of the poor, and people have access to us, and information comes into us in a variety of different ways. Not always through 911. Sometimes it comes in through elected officials. Sometimes it comes in through neighborhood associations. Sometimes they'll be at a neighborhood meeting and they'll be told about a problem, and then we will specifically address that problem in response to that community member concern. So we're sensitive and aware of that. I don't have an answer for how that changes. I actually was on the phone with Director Bob Causey today about all of that in terms of you know, how we record that information, how we set up a call, all of that is part of the learning. So I want to affirm it, but I also want to recognize that this is not an uncommon practice. Doesn't mean it's right, doesn't mean it needs to stay the same, but I'm kind of at a loss as to how to break that up. But at the end of the day, oh yeah, no, sorry, Bob Causey runs 911. Excuse me. Thank you, Elizabeth. At the end of the day, I just want to say thanks. I know we've gone a little over. Thanks, Brian, for your time and for everybody. And then you know, we'll keep at it.
Yeah, thank you both so much for answering our questions and your time coming. Hopefully we can continue, and whether this turns into talking about call types or whatever, really appreciate your engagement with us.
Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, we are gonna, we do have one final agenda item. I know there's been a lot in this meeting. I think it's all been super informative. And thank you everyone for bearing with our last item here. Yeah, and so I'm just gonna pass it back to the chairs, and, you know, bear in mind, this is really just a report out, not so much a discussion, but just sort of a check-in with each other. And hopefully that will align with the amount of time you have left. So go ahead, chairs.
Perfect. Thank you, Dory. All right. So did you want to take this, Odelia, or did you want me to take it?
No, I just wanted to say, like Dory said, there's open public comment. So if community members, if you want to comment on something that was just talked about or anything else, hopefully this will take around 15 minutes, and then we'll hear all open public comments. So if you have something, you can share it then or in the chat now, but go ahead, Devontae.
Thank you so much. Okay, so just wanted to speak on the final report on PCEP's restructure, or PCCEP. That's something that we've been working on the last about 2 months or so, just trying to get things restructured as far as deciding what our subcommittees will be, and whether or not we're going to have a steering committee, and what the full committee looks like, and what all the core functions of these different committees will be to allow PCEP to be as efficient as possible the next year. So if we can get the next slide.
Yeah, so here we'll have each set of subcommittee chairs share out on their core tasks that they've developed. So I think for community engagement, we just have Noelle here. So Noelle, go ahead.
Yeah, so for the community engagement subcommittee, the core tasks we're looking at is identifying and relationship building with community partners and leaders over the spectrum of Portland. The priorities definitely being those centered around like the settlement agreement, so of certain marginalized communities. We also have relationship building with the council and mayor to learn more about public safety priorities and needs. We also, with this, it's making sure it's relevant, timely, and let's see what else. Sorry, my screen's freezing up a little bit. So we're also looking at a community engagement event once every 2 months in community spaces, whether that be like a town hall, listening event, open house, or another training. We have the April 7th showing of Alien Boy coming up. That is part of the training, but we've been in communications of maybe an event afterwards on this as well. And then we also have evaluation of BPB's community engagement work and how they're going about building the trust and transparency, and recommendations based on community engagement work and findings. So it's kind of being flexible with how we go, but these are our core tasks we're going to be continuing to work on.
All right. And do people want to pause for comment on each component, or should we look at them all and then revisit? PCEP members.
I'm with Dr. Allen. I think we should revisit at the end.
Right. Okay. Let's move on to the Policy and Reform Subcommittee. This was prepared by Kip, so I will pass it to Kip as his co-chair is also absent today.
Yeah, Kip and Tia. I'm grateful for Tia's thoughtfulness, and I just built on it. So the things we've identified through conversations that we feel are some of our core tasks and how we want to spend our time in these meetings, and appreciate the turnout and hope it keeps growing, but is to in our subcommittee meeting have a briefing on the current PPB directives and what is up for review, and keeping everybody informed and helping to engage. I think it's an important aspect of it because it is kind of unique in engagement with a policing organization. So I just want to keep that moving forward and keep evolving. Our committee will also be working, writing public comment on directives involving use of force, stops data, and directives relating to the settlement agreement during public review periods. That's part of the first bullet, but also with the consent decree, lawsuit, and the other moving pieces that the independent monitor is tracking. And our hope is to kind of have through lines through all of that. Also to keep track of the remaining 45 plus articles that I think that need to be completed to get to the end of the settlement agreement. Also as to bring up and address issues that arise in the moment for public input and next steps that are warranted. Next steps also, we have talked as an overall committee about how do we support each other, and is there a workflow across us? And sometimes I think there will be, and sometimes maybe a subcommittee will fully own something. We'll see how that plays out as coming weeks come. Be able to facilitate, I can say words at this time of night, facilitate ongoing discussions of city code directives, reporting, and evaluations as needed. So just more of what we were doing in the previous calendar year and building on that. And of course, working with community and any relevant organizations and making recommendations and providing input that will strengthen the work that we all do together. Conversations and relationship building with various first responders, including the PPB, understanding how we approach the recommendations we do and facilitate conversations needs the parties that are directly involved as well, of course. And then connecting and working with other councils, committees across the city and other related organizations, again, to provide that extra level of being well informed and having what I thought, again, today was a really great, frank discussion. I think that's how we move through this as community. And of course, working with city council, mayor's office, and additional stakeholders to address all of the above and focus on how we do improve policy and have better outcomes, which is why we're all here. 41 paragraphs. Thank you, Dan.
Okay. Thank you, Kip. Okay, full committee chairs, you are up.
Sure. So I can go over this one. So essentially the full committee core task, all matters requiring a discussion that includes all PCEP members or votes of the full committee. Definitely those will both be core functions for the full committee. Regular report outs from subcommittee chairs on progress and work products of those individual subcommittees. There might not be every PCEP member attending the subcommittee meeting, so the full committee is an excellent opportunity for everyone to kind of do their share outs and everyone to get on the same page. We obviously anticipate more member attendance at the full committee meetings, so that'll be an excellent space for that. Content discussions deemed by full committee co-chairs to warrant input of full committee. So if there was going to be maybe a decision or a direction being considered that we would find beneficial for the full committee to be privy of or to be included in, we would have those at the full committee as well. And any hosted amici trainings that might need to happen or be on the radar, full committee would be the spot for those to be held as well. And then managing governing documents such as bylaws and the PCEP or PCCEP plan. Those things or tasks that would obviously impact the entirety of the group as a whole, it would make more sense for those to be done at the full committee, and so those are where we'll do those. Don't know if anybody had any questions about that, but I think it's pretty straightforward. And
then we do have last up the steering committee. I can read this one. Steering committee is going to be about the strategic guidance and direction for all committee components. So to establish the high-level priorities that guide the work of the full committee and its subcommittees. Reminder that the steering committee will be convened by all PCEP leadership, so the 6 co-chairs. Coordination and communication. So this is to make sure that there's no overlap between subcommittees and that the subcommittees are doing work that is consistent with the core tasks and missions laid out here. And then it can also be a space for evaluation and continuous improvement. Yeah. And those will be happening on a quarterly basis. And we are working on getting the first one scheduled, which will be for the second quarter of 2025. Okay, let's open it up for a brief discussion. PCEP members, anything you want to touch upon, get clarity about, revise, suggest, etc. Go ahead, Leslie.
Hi, yes, going back to the community engagement one, I didn't see, I wanted to make sure that we incorporated, if possible, that community education element that we talked about. And so maybe it's just not super like clear to me where it is here, but I did want to ask about that.
Yeah, great point. I do believe that there was consensus about that. I think I just forgot to add it to the slide. But yeah, we'll make sure to include that, what was discussed about the education piece.
Cool. Thank you.
Other questions, comments, even approval, support?
I just wanted to hop in real quick and say, part of the community education piece could also be wrapped up with the community engagement events that we host. Those would be, of course, like every 2 months, but those ideas are very open right now to what those can be. And of course, community engagement is a part of that. It's about us teaching, but also us learning from the community.
Great point. Anything on policy and reform?
Can you go to that slide? Oh, thank you. I personally think everything looks great, and I don't think that's just because I can no longer process things, but I do think like everything looks great on paper, and we'll just have to make sure that it flows together well. But yeah, I'm in approval, and hopefully things work and we can be collaborative, but not too much. So, yeah.
I agree. I think this gives us good guidance, and it is like the first of the first kind of attempt at this. So I'm sure we will have some edits and kind of work on this as we fine tune as we go. But I think this gives us, for both committees, enough guidance to move forward without restricting us too much.
Yeah, and I do want to emphasize along the way that this is going to be iterative, and I'm really stoked with the conversations we've had the last several meetings to get to this point. And yeah, it's going to always be an evolving process.
All right, how about the last components? Well, not last. Last in this order. Full committee, steering committee.
I still have a hard time wrapping my head around the steering committee concept, just because so much of our work is so time sensitive and malleable. But I'm very open to doing it and, getting that guidance, because maybe just that little bit of structure will just help us tackle some of the bigger things. So I'm curious and eager to try it out.
Yeah, that's fair. I kind of agree, Leslie. I think we're gonna see how it works because of exactly what you said, the responsive nature of a lot of this work. Any other comments? Give it just a few more seconds here. Okay, well, how about we pass it over to Afrida for open public comment and the last item of this meeting.
All right, so now it's time for open public comment, and just a reminder of open public comment. It is an opportunity for you to comment on anything or ask questions about anything that was discussed today, or anything of any work that PCCEP is doing in the community. And just like these three fine folks have done and raised their hands, please go ahead and raise your hand, and we will get to you in the queue. I see you, Antoinette.
Greetings. Can you hear me?
Yes. No, I was just noting that I see your
physical. Oh, and I just jump right in. Okay, I'll wait my turn.
Yeah, we're going to Dr. Allen, but I see you. You're going to be the fourth hand.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My first comment, I imagine, goes to Kip. Is the period of time between the contractors who do the monitoring, the 3 months or so, that included the police presence on PSU campus, is that period of time going to be somehow accounted for? I mean, is that behavior going to be somehow included?
So from the independent monitor standpoint, I don't believe so. That's my current understanding, and I am folks on the call. If I'm incorrect, please correct me. As far as the engagement and how it transpired, we have discussed it previously, and I think overall that's part of what we want to be looking at from a policy standpoint is an equitable and constitutional engagement. So we did have some public commentary, and I believe Odia helped facilitate that last year, and none of that's resolved yet, or not none of that. Some of that has not been resolved yet. One thing missing from the bullet, and thank you for the question, because you just piqued a missing part, is that we also will be talking about some of the settlements and that are coming up, and the ongoing conversation that we kind of started out with as well today on
Townsend today.
Yeah, Townsend. Thank you. It's been a really long day of meetings. So that all of that's ongoing, and that will all be baked into the how we look at policies and what can be improved on.
Well, I understood that the independent contractors weren't going to be involved. There's unless somehow somebody modifies a contract for the one before or the one after and asks them to come back, they're not involved.
They are not involved. That's correct.
Yeah,
but
that's
PCCEP
exactly
still
right.
has a mission.
Yeah, so that's something potentially PCCEP could ask the monitor to do that, but as of right now, or someone else could, but as it stands, the monitor will not be reviewing that period of time.
Somebody better have money if the monitor is going to be asked. That's a contract modification, I say, speaking from my career in contracting.
Yeah.
And my next comment is for you, Odelia. My appreciation of what Kat had to give us wasn't phrased in terms of favoritism. And I certainly can see a point of view. I think you were talking about how the police are handling things differently in some ways than in other ways, when really from a very neutral frame of reference, there's not any difference. Like, is every person who jaywalks equal in their jaywalking offense? Or is the block they jaywalk on, or the group that they're near when they jaywalked, affecting how the police read the situation? I certainly do see that these things are hidden in the behavioral codes of the city and in the ways that the police do and don't understand this little group of people and how they communicate with other groups that are only a few feet away if you actually measure between this block and that block. I wondered if you could see it the way I phrased it.
I don't think I understand what you're saying. I think I don't remember how you phrased it, but I'm happy to talk to you in the chat with you about this because I think we need to move to the other comments or
All
yeah.
of my phrasing had to do with relationship as opposed to favoritism.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm still a little confused. I'm sorry.
I think that's a good suggestion to engage in the chat, or perhaps via a different method. Yeah,
I'm available, Dory, anytime, of course.
great. Thank you, Dr. Allen.
Barbara?
Hi, thank you so much for all these discussions, and particularly with the I forget what you call it, when they were handing out food on the sidewalk, that whole thing. Given the changes in federal funding, the cuts to food banks and housing and different things, and Social Security possibly, we don't know, right? It's very possible that there's going to be a huge spike in houselessness and hunger, and I think that like asking people to get permits or hassling them in any way, I think that I hope there's compassion and mercy. So thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Babs?
Hi, it looks like, is Dan's hand still up?
Dan's hand is still up.
Yeah, okay, I stepped away. I've already spoken, so I can hold my comments. And then I think Antoinette also wanted to make a comment, so I'm fine with Dan and Antoinette going before me, okay?
Okay. Antoinette?
Thank you. Shay, my teammate and I have just been texting back and forth. We're excited about the subcommittee community engagement. When might we meet with you all? There are so many collaborative opportunities that we don't want to miss. And so who would I reach out to? Because we just have a lot of ideas we want to share and be in community with you and your community engagement. And next, the April 7th documentary, is there going to be a panel discussion? I'm curious because is it training, or will there be an opportunity to share updates from that happening to what's in place now? So I'm just wondering what would that look like April 7th? Because Shay and I are planning to attend.
Yeah, I can jump in. There's gonna be a brief. We don't have the theater for too long, unfortunately, so the film is about an hour and a half, and then we'll have 30 minutes, so we'll just have some brief like comments from PCEP, and usually things run late, so we don't know how much time we'll actually have. So we'll have some closing comments, and then we're hoping to have a follow-up panel to really continue the conversation. So that's kind of looking like a separate event, and we'll have the date and time determined for that follow-up panel or whatever it may be at the screening. So that'll be communicated more further.
Thank you.
Kristen?
Thank you. I just wanted to quickly touch on the questions I got asked in the chat. I actively listen best when I'm not trying to engage in chat. And so every time I went to go do something, I got pulled away from the conversation. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for their patience with me. The questions that I saw about the CBPA, one was about what ADA accommodations we are planning to make. And I'm sorry, I'm paraphrasing, but I lost internet access. And so the chat disappeared for me. So I'm trying to do this from memory. But the application has a new question added about what ADA accommodations folks may need. And then based on whether they check yes or no, we'll have private conversations about that and meet people where they're at with providing resources. Don't want to prescribe anything until we know what folks are needing, but we do want to make sure that we're accommodating for that. Some of the outreach did include some screen accessibility and some low vision supports as far as like design and those types of things. So we use that as part of our outreach efforts, and we'll continue to work more on accessibility in that way. Another question was asked about what outreach has been done in other languages. And I wanted to say that we started a draft of the flyer and communication in Spanish. And when I learned more about what was involved as a member of the CBPA, the example that was given to me was folks on this board may have to read documents upwards of 1,000 pages in a very short amount of time. And knowing how long translation services happen, I didn't want to erode trust by promising people with meaningful participation and not being able to have them participate meaningful once they were on the board. I will say that I met with somebody from the Equity and Human Rights Office this morning, and we discussed language access and how we can make sure that once the CBPA is seated, that we can provide language access to community members, both who are attending meetings, who are filing complaints, who need follow-up and support. And so those conversations are really happening right from the beginning in the hopes that we can really build in that framework for folks. And then the last question I know that got asked was about if I'm not seeing the applications, how do I know that they're complete? Every application question is marked required. And so folks won't be able to submit the application unless all the fields are entered. So sorry, I talked really fast. I appreciate folks answering the question and again for the opportunity to be here. So thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. And Dan.
Hi, thanks. I'm Dan Handelman. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the group Portland Cop Watch, and I'm also a former Police Accountability Commissioner. And while I appreciate getting that answer, I still have a lot of concerns about the rollout of the applications and the content and what's happening already. It seems strange to me from an equity standpoint that the nominating committee is getting applications as they go along instead of getting them all at one time, so that people who had the time or whatever privilege to be able to fill out the form early get their things reviewed first. But that's just another issue to think about. So it's important, I think, especially when in the context of the conversation you had tonight, to know that I think you already recognize this, but when the police showed up at the community events for the two commissioners, this was right after, for the first time that I can remember in 15 years or so, the police association president showed up at city council and said in public, I don't usually say these things in public because they usually talk behind closed doors, and basically called out Councilor Canal for being anti-union, for proposing a change to the city code, which is a real stretch at least. And then the PPA president showed up again this Tuesday to talk about the budget and is repeating these comments about how everybody in Portland asked for more police because that's the way to deal with crime. But there are a number of studies, including great series of articles that was in Street Roots last August, that say the correlation between number of cops and the amount of crime are not, you can't make that correlation. And in fact, the Oregonian put out a poll today showing that people are less concerned about crime, even though we allegedly still have a huge staffing crisis. So I think these are all things for you to all think about as we move forward. I am, on the steering committee of the AMA Coalition for Justice and Police Reform, and I usually get information when new things are posted in the court docs. I did not see it, but apparently I just found this online that the independent monitor filed their final plan on February 3rd. I don't remember that being discussed at any of these meetings. I know they submitted the draft plan. We were supposed to make comments by, December, and then they extended that when the judge was still needing to review it in January. I didn't know it was finalized. So, I'm sort of on the inside and I still don't know things. So, there's a lot of communication and transparency that needs to be adjusted. And kind of also regarding the independent monitor, I don't know, maybe hoping that the steering committee is going to wait to resolve this, but if the community engagement committee is doing forums and the settlement agreement people are going to host the independent monitor town halls, then how are you going to make sure that these once every 2 months things by the community engagement committee don't overlap with the other community engagement that's being done by the other committee? But I'm hoping you all work that out by talking with one another and figuring it out, because you could overload the community and yourselves by having too many town halls. All right, and lastly, I've said this before, but I'm gonna say it again, especially when we're in the context of talking about police violence, it really bothers me when people talk about the little dots on a piece of paper as bullets. So I'm hoping that you remember to say dot instead of bullet. Thank you.
All right, lastly, Babs. You're on mute, Babs.
I don't know if people from the independent monitoring team want to respond to Dan. All I was going to say was I'm well aware that Chief Day kind of skirted around my question about Portland Street Response. And of course, he brought up the budget. And my response to that was, duh, that's, we know that. We are in a budget crisis. But I at least wanted to go on record in a meeting like this, where there were two representatives of the police department and representatives of the independent police monitoring team, as bringing that up. And I will continue to beat that drum when I attend 2 budget listening sessions next week. There's 2 more coming up. District 4, that's Mitch Green's district, as you know, and then District 2, my district, and Samir Canal's district. So I did appreciate the 2 police officers being here and what they were trying to say, but and I'll cut myself short. Sometimes when people talk way too long, it's hard to get to, okay, can you please just say what the most important things are? Like 1, 2, 3, ABC. But that's just me personally. So thank you for listening, and thank you for all the work this committee has done and will continue to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Babs. And I turn it back over to Odelia and Devante to wrap the meeting up.
Yeah. Long meeting. Lots of interesting stuff. I'm excited to continue to have these conversations and see what comes out of it. As we talked about before, our next event is April 7th, which will be the screening of Alien Boy, The Life and Death of James Chassie. And that'll be at Clinton Street Theater. Don't forget, you have to RSVP to get a seat. Except for PCCEP, there are seats reserved for us, so don't worry about that. Yeah, thanks everyone for being here. I know I have a headache after this, so. I mean, I always get headaches after PCEP meetings, so I don't know what that means, but anyways,
Great.
yeah. Sorry, Dory.
Love to hear it.
I
Yeah,
was with the whole thing, I thought. So I thought everybody did.
Yeah, that's the point. That's why we do what we do, right?
yeah, that's why I joined PCEP. So anyways, moving on. Yeah, thanks again for being here. I know this was a lot. It was a really heavy conversation, and we also covered like 7 different things. So appreciate everyone's patience and also willingness to accept non-closure. Devontae, do you have anything else you want to share?
Yeah, I just wanted to go ahead and echo the appreciation and gratitude for everyone showing up to the space tonight. And yeah, the film showing on April 7th, and then that's just a reminder that's also the same day that Odelia and I are meeting with Mayor Wilson. So very busy day, April 7th, and excited for all the work we're going to be doing. So thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you all. See you later. Have a great night.
Thank you all. Take care.
Good night, all.